Hello everyone, I'm Maddie's Masquerade. You might remember me from such panels as Banjo-Kazooie from Dream to Switch and Quiet Introverted Nerd. Today's panel is dedicated to a company that any anime fan knows, either from nostalgia or anger-inducing rage. It's 4Kids Entertainment. There have been many rumors about this company and I'm here to debunk them in my panel. The unbiased history of 4Kids Entertainment, rumors debunked. Before we start though, I need to get one thing straight. This panel is primarily to cover the history of 4Kids Entertainment. I will not be biased towards any anime dub unless it had an effect on the industry or the people involved. If you came here because you want to see a rant about jelly-filled donuts or invisible guns or weird spring-loaded hammer things, please leave the room now. Don't worry, we'll inevitably cover One Piece when we get to it. But without further ado, it's time to start the panel. We begin in the year 1970 when the company was known as Leisure Concepts Incorporated. They didn't dabble too much in TV production back then, but were well known for the production of the classic Thundercats cartoons, as well as working to push merchandise of Nintendo properties such as Super Mario Bros. And Donkey Kong Country. I got a few logos for them off of Logopedia, but that was the best quality I could get for Leisure Concepts. You might also recognize the Summit Media Group, which you may know from the credits of Pokemon Season 1. That was their media buying arm. In 1987, the company's leads Alfred R. Kahn and Norman J. Grossfeld joined Leisure Concepts and renamed it 4Kids Entertainment in 1995. The first show it produced was WCMAC Masters. Nope, not Pokemon yet. This show aired in local syndication and was later rerun on the Fox Box in 2003, and it was briefly on 4Kids' website if anyone remembers that show. But then in 1998, thanks to their partnership with Nintendo, pushing that merchandise for Mario and DK, they licensed that one show you probably remember them best for, likely your first experience with them, and part of the reason you're here, it's Pokemon. This also kicked off 4Kids' Risk Takers, because at the time, Pokemon was best known in the West for that show that sent over 600 kids to the hospital with an epileptic seizure. In fact, none of the networks bid on it, not even Kids WB, because between that, its animation style not matching what else was on, and the fact that they thought a show with over 150 different creatures wouldn't sell. And yet, despite all odds, it made 4Kids filthy rich and started the first couple rumors. Rumor number one. For our first rumor, the song known as Pokemon Dance Mix on the To Be a Master CD, you know, Pokemon, the journey's just begun, is thought to have been a rejected theme song. This rumor came from the old promo tape given away with Nintendo Power back when the franchise first came stateside. That's not true. It was never supposed to be a theme song. There were some rejected theme songs, however, but they will likely never hear the light of day, according to Norman J. Grossfeld and theme song composer John Siegler on the podcast known as 4Kids Flashback. For our second rumor, and this is one that I believe for a while, Nintendo had come up with the slogan, "Gotta catch 'em all." Turns out that's wrong. Despite its use on media outside the anime, probably more so outside the anime, Norman J. Grossfeld himself came up with the phrase during a meeting. And now our third rumor, and in 2000, in the Johto Journeys episode, The Whistle Stops, when Victory Null chomps on James' hand, he is saying, "Leo Burnett and 4Kids are the devil," backwards. Now this one's actually true. I didn't believe it myself at first because there's so many backmasking rumors around, including some Christian groups who think that the polka rap is saying, "I love Satan," backwards. But the reason it happened is because 4Kids basically gave clips of the Pokemon that James' voice actor, Eric Stewart, had voiced to Leo Burnett, an advertising company for Burger King, for free, when Leo Burnett and Burger King could have paid him enough for his health care and 4Kids wouldn't have owed him a cent for that. He never wanted that bit to air though, and he just recorded it as a venting joke, but it accidentally got mixed in. So anyway, onward to 2001, 4Kids gets 3 more productions. There was Tama and Friends, which aired on local syndication. It was a dub of an anime called Tama of 3rd Street. Also on Kids WB, which was airing Pokemon at the time, there was what is credited as 4Kids' first original production, co-created with this Korean company Cinepix, Cubix, robots for everyone. But probably they were best known around this time for the English dub of Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters, known simply in the West as Yu-Gi-Oh! As with Pokemon, investing in Yu-Gi-Oh! Turned out to be another huge success for a company and led to our fourth rumor. The rumor is that 4Kids is completely responsible for all the name changes, such as Joey, Tay, and Tristan, as well as the card edits like Monster Reborn's funky-looking Cross, Dark Magician Girl's pentagram being erased, and Harpy Lady... I promised Katsucon this would be a family panel, so no further discussion of the Harpy Lady will be allowed here. Now, anyway, I actually believe in a counter-rumor that Konami was responsible for all that. Given some of the edits made it onto the real cards, the cards were edited into their anime counterparts like Time Wizard being a monster or Flame Swordsman being a fusion monster, despite not being played like that at all. Also, early episodes used Japanese translation of the card names like Reborn the Monster or Tiny Guardian, only to change to Monster Reborn or Little Wingard upon the release of the real card. Turns out, according to Matthew Durdak, one of the writers of 4Kids, pretty much everybody involved had a say in it. In fact, Kids WB came up with the names Tay and Tristan, and the Nihon Ad System, the Japanese animation company that produced Yu-Gi-Oh!, they forced 4Kids to use the name Joey. Alright, so anyway, moving on, this success proved crucial in 4Kids' next big move in 2002. When Saban sold the Fox Kids library to the Walt Disney Company, the Fox network put their Saturday morning programming up for bidding. Whoever won the bidding would get full control of the Saturday block, standards and practices aside. 4Kids won the bidding and we got the Fox Box in fall of 2002. The launch shows were the English dub of Kirby Right Back Atcha, which they got through their Nintendo partnership, Ultimate Muscle, and the Tokusatsu series Ultraman Tiga. They also acquired Stargate Infinity from Geek Entertainment, and eventually premiered another original series, the 2003 version of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But with the birth of a Fox Box comes our fifth rumor. People started wondering if 4Kids only acquired Ultraman Tiga to explain a reference in the Kirby anime. This is very obviously untrue. There are several factors that led to them acquiring it. 4Kids noted its similarity to Power Rangers, also Subaraya Productions. The company behind the Ultra series was shopping around to bring Tiga to the West. Saban and Deke were not willing to give the series a full dub, instead opting to give them Western adaptations with spliced footage as they had done previously with Power Rangers and Superhuman Samurai Cyber Squad, respectively. In addition, according to Yu-Gi-Oh! Collector magazine, Norman J. Grossfeld was ecstatic at the time to bring an Ultraman show to kids' TV, given that he grew up with a classic series. And lastly, the deal was closed before Kirby had even started airing in Japan. Come 2003, 4Kids had acquired the Cramp Twins from Cartoon Network UK, and 3 other new shows were coming to the Fox Box. A short-lived dub of a French series called Funky Cops, and the dubs of the original Shaman King anime and Sonic X, which would almost never leave the block and would eventually end up carrying the block at times. But most impressive was the second season of Ultimate Muscle. 4Kids actually funded the second season because the show flopped in Japan but was such a success in the West. Moving on to 2004, this was the year that Fox Box eventually rebranded as 4Kids TV. This is because in many markets, Fox wasn't even airing the Fox Box. Some of them opted not to, leaving what were then UPN, WB, and independent stations to air it. Others were owned and operated stations that had already declined Fox Kids. In the DC area, WTTG Fox 5 did air the Fox Box though, so the name still made sense. Anyway, they had acquired the Italian show Winx Club from Rainbow, which is actually still going on today. Coming soon, I eventually plan to do a panel solely about this show. They also got F-Zero GP Legend from Nintendo, and they dubbed Tokyo Mew Mew, also known as Mew Mew Power. Now we're getting into some pretty steep rumors as we move on to the proverbial elephant in the room. Yep, that one, One Piece. I'm sure right now most of you are still feeling the rage from this adaptation and probably thinking, what was 4Kids even thinking trying to air this on Saturday mornings? The initial popular rumor is that its art style made it look more tame than it ended up being, and they didn't really watch it at first, going in blindly to pick it up. But now I must correct myself. Previous editions of this panel had stated that it wasn't 4Kids' idea to license One Piece, and that Toei Animation insisted 4Kids take the license during an attempt to license Magical Doremi. This was stated by Mark Kirk in an interview with Anime News Network, and I believed it because 4Kids didn't peep a word about One Piece until June 2004, 3 months before its English dub air date, and had been eyeing Magical Doremi since at least late 2003, a full 2 years before the dub premiered. Due to their desire to diversify the plots, box to include girl-targeted shows which Mew Mew Power and Winx Club had helped with. The truth is, we still don't really know who was behind it. But what Norman J. Grossfeld did say in the 4Kids podcast is that it was Shueisha, the Japanese publishing company of One Piece and many Shonen Jump manga, were the ones who licensed it to 4Kids, and they picked 4Kids due to their ability to push its merchandise. That being said, Shueisha did urge 4Kids to get One Piece on TV as soon as possible, even though Fox's standards and practices knew this wasn't going to fly. So they pretty much did what they could until they could legally let it go, as I stated in the last panel. However, I'm not going to say if 4Kids seeked it out or if it was Shueisha's idea, because if I just assumed something, I'd be a hypocrite for making this panel in the first place. But all I know is it wasn't Toei's idea, it was a standalone deal, not a package as any other anime. Although I do know Toei still had to approve all of the edits, including the voice director, as Zolo's VA, Mark Dereisen, mentioned in an interview with the American Shonen Jump back when One Piece first came over here. Mato, Funimation's translator, already confirmed on the One Piece live journal community that Toei said Luffy must be voiced by a woman, although I don't know if that pilot Funimation made dubbed with Eric Vale was a deciding factor in Shueisha picking 4Kids instead. However, if Shueisha did want 4Kids to get it on TV as soon as possible, we can safely say that 4Kids having a block on a TV network anyone with an antenna can watch compared to Funimation's obscure digital channel likely was a factor as well, but we still don't know whose idea it was or who seeked out who, so this mystery is still going to remain open. But with all the history I've gone over in the past few panels, more rumors popped up, one of which I kind of just debunked with my previous slide. Mew Mew Power only had half the series dubbed, and only 23 episodes actually even aired in the US. The rumor is that Studio Pierrot wasn't happy with the dub and wouldn't let them have the second half. As I said earlier about Ultraman Tiga, Yu-Gi-Oh! And One Piece, all the edits had to be approved by the Japanese company, and Studio Pierrot was aware of this the whole time. According to Hike Yagami, one of the most trusted members and YouTubers in the Tokyo Mew Mew fandom, it's because 4Kids had promised Studio Pierrot a merchandising deal and failed to deliver that they lost the license and couldn't dub the second half. Now, I am going to highlight and edit with this next rumor, and feel free to throw a shade at some certain someone if you want, because we got a case of correlation and causation here. While it was a mixed bag when 4Kids erased Japanese text off signs, some people noticed it even erased English text too. A lot of people misconstrued Alcon's US kids don't read comment as thinking they're illiterate. Again, say what you want about that comment, but the two have nothing to do with each other. One of 4Kids' music composers on Reddit did an Ask Me Anything and revealed that the erasure of English text had to do with the fact that they own international rights to a lot of these shows. Ever seen a foreign open of Kirby or Pokemon or Tokyo Mew Mew on YouTube and heard it sound like the 4Kids opening dubbed into that language? That's what that's a part of. They wanted to make it easier on the countries who got their version of the show so they could write what they want. In addition, in the case of Sonic X, the masters already had the text erased from them, as the subversion on Crunchyroll and Hulu indicates. That means in that case, TMS did it for them. Anyway, around this time, Shadow the Hedgehog was released for GameCube and PlayStation 2 and Xbox. It was the first Sonic game to use a cast from the Sonic X dub, such as Jason Griffiths as Sonic and Shadow, Amy Palance as Tails, and most famously Mike Pollock as Dr. Eggman, who continues to voice him today. But how did this happen? We got another correlation-causation case. Around the time of Shadow the Hedgehog's release, Dean Bristow, the voice of Eggman in the previous 3D Sonic games, Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 and Sonic Heroes, had passed away due to a heart attack. The rumor came that Sega of America had contacted Mike Pollock to replace him, but contracts ended up replacing the whole cast. Not true. According to an interview with Mike Pollock in Sonic News Network, the recasting, which was done by Sega of Japan, happened before Dean Bristow's death. And come to think of it, if the two were related, why do characters like Shahara from Sonic and the Secret Rings, voiced by Erica Schroeder, still use that New York talent pool? She was never even in Sonic X anyway. In addition, Ryan Drummond, voice of Sonic in the previous 3D games, has no ill will toward Jason Griffiths anyway. His anger lies with Sega of Japan for replacing him with no confrontation. Oh, speaking of something I just brought up, next rumor, the 4Kids voice actors were owned by them and could easily quit for a better company like Viz or Funimation. Wrong. All of the 4Kids voices were essentially freelance. Long before the days of remote dubbing, 4Kids only used voice actors from the New York area. You may have noticed in the Slayers dub, a lot of the 4Kids talent, like Lisa Ortiz, who voiced Lena Inverse, were in that show. It was mostly an area thing. Having said that, they did often hang out in the 4Kids contract in office, and there were some related contracts they signed, one of which I'll get to later. But another rumor had popped up around that time. Similar to Ultimate Muscle Season 2 in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Pyramid of Light movie, and later on the Capsule Monsters OVA, some people believe that Season 3 of Sonic X was made exclusively for the American market. It also wasn't, but the rumor came from metadata that it hadn't aired in Japan yet while it had aired in the US. That's only true for linear television. It was still already on home video in Japan. Anyway, now for something I get asked a lot and was recently answered. In the 4Kids National Anthem, yes, I'm sure you're all cringing at this, Master Splinter's verse, "On the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air," was recorded in a falsetto voice, which led some people to believe that there was a stand-in for Darren Dunstan. There wasn't. He recorded 2 versions of it, and they liked that one better than his usual gritty voice that he uses in the cartoon. At the time, 4Kids was testing the waters of their naysayers by releasing uncut versions of Yu-Gi-Oh! And Shaman King on DVD. These DVDs had no paint or music edits, and a script that much more closely matched the Japanese script, although they still had the Americanized names like Joey Wheeler or Morty Oyamada. However, the Yu-Gi-Oh! DVDs were canceled after 3 volumes and Shaman King after 2. The popular rumor was that Funimation was threatened by 4Kids at the time, now seeing them as competition, and stopped releasing 4Kids DVDs altogether. I was once again wrong in my previous panel, with a counter rumor saying that the DVD release was halted due to legal problems with Yugi's Japanese voice actor Shunsuke Kazuma. That did cause something down the line, but we'll get into that later. The reason I thought so was because around the time they started uploading the Japanese episodes to their YouTube account, the 4Kids representative that ran their YouTube account, affectionately known as the nameless official cubicle guy, had stated this, but he was only correct about the uploads, not the DVDs. The real answer to the rumor was just simply poor sales, according to Eric Stewart on the DVD on 4Kids Flashback. That was one of the rumors that came up back then, but others had shot it down. Minor rumor here that the last bit of 4Kids Winx Club dub didn't hit due to Nickelodeon getting the license, but its original release date predates Nickelodeon's acquisition by about a year. That was when Funimation and 4Kids actually had split for real, and it had nothing to do with the uncut DVDs. Anyway, back to the bigger rumors, and here's another elephant in the room. Did how much they were putting into One Piece push 4Kids into bankruptcy? Maybe a little bit, but nothing too significant. It's time I get into the story of 4Kids' money woes. It all started when the Pokemon Company International, then known as Pokemon USA, took the license for the Pokemon anime away from 4Kids. After that, 4Kids, which had usually reported gains every quarter, started suffering losses. Small losses, but losses nonetheless. So 4Kids' next plan was to get a similarly marketed franchise, one they owned outright and no one could ever take it away from them. That answer came in the form of Chaotic. This was an old Danish card game in the early 2000s, and 4Kids bought the whole thing, lock, stock, and barrel, so that they would receive 100% of its revenue. Of course, that was a huge blow to them because owning everything, they also created everything. They made the TV series from scratch, produced the card game, cards, and the online trading card game component, but it seemed to be paying off at first. The gaps began to close every year, and Chaotic was sometimes rivaling Magic the Gathering, Pokemon, and Yu-Gi-Oh! On the best-selling card game list. But right when it seemed like 4Kids was just going to break even, the economic recession of the late 2000s ruined any chance Chaotic had of succeeding further and stopped 4Kids just short of their recovery, causing it all to blow up in their face and a major loss for the company. They probably put way more money into 40 episodes of Chaotic Season 1 than they did all 104 episodes of their One Piece dub, and not to say nothing of the card game, physical and online. It all just went up in smoke. They put so much into it, and they suffered a big blow for it. Which leads to another, and debunks another rumor, one I heard more recently. Some people apparently believe 4Kids tried to sue the original Danish creators of Chaotic, Apex Marketing, over profit, which is what really killed the franchise because it caused neither side to be able to produce or create any more episodes or products for over 3 years. I was in the Toon Zone, or Anime Superhero as it's known now, 4Kids Talkback thread as it happened. If you've ever been to that site, hi, I'm Donkey Kong Sog. Anyway, 4Kids was treading carefully and would have never licensed Chaotic in the first place if they couldn't get the full rights at the start, as the goal was to avoid another incident like Pokemon. Furthermore, it had been dormant since 2001. What did the original Data's creators want with it anyway? There's so many things wrong with this rumor and I have no idea where it started. So anyway, back to Pokemon switching licenses. When that happened, most of the voice cast was replaced, and the rumor was that because the new voices were willing to work for less. They still use the same New York pool, after all. I actually fell for this for a long time, until Mike Pollock replied to one of my very own tweets. 4Kids had all of its voice actors sign a 2-year non-compete clause when they started working on Pokemon, meaning that the voice actors could not voice the same characters for a different company for 2 years after 4Kids lost the license. It does explain the recent return of some of the voice actors, such as Ted Lewis as Giovanni and Gary, after Craig Blair moved out of New York. So anyway, back to the history of 4Kids. With Chaotic and Ninja Turtles out of the way, the latter not being able to financially continue, and eventually purchased by Nick, 4Kids decided to focus their efforts on anime again, given that's how they got so big in the first place. So they reformatted their new block, having purchased the Kids WB block in the same vein as Fox Kids, so what was once the CW4Kids was now Toonzai. In preparation for this, they ended up licensing broadcast television rights to Dragon Ball Z Kai, which was concurrently airing on Nicktoons. It seems that cable and broadcast rights were two completely different things, allowing it to air on both networks at once. In addition, they gave anime subs another go as a site called Toonzaki. It was mostly embeds from Funimation and Hulu. Yeah, remember when you could do that? But apparently it fixed some of their loading issues and they uploaded their own subs of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds and Sonic X. In fact, doing this, they eventually completed the sub Sonic X. This also is where the incident with Shinsuke Kazuma comes into play. The company formerly known as Johnny's and Associates did not renew their contract with ADK, who was in charge of distributing Yu-Gi-Oh! Overseas, and therefore the Japanese version of Yu-Gi-Oh! Could not legally see the light of day in the US. So with less resources draining their reserves, it seemed 4Kids were on the rise again. Rave Girl, a Yu-Gi-Oh! Fan site blog, had noted this later, but apparently they had secured broadcast rights to Blue Dragon. So some of you may remember having a short run on Cartoon Network, as well as Monsuno, which was also airing on Nicktoons. Also some Jules Verne cartoon, but from Rainbow, the guys behind Winx Club and Huntic, and seasons 2 of Dragon Ball Z Kai and Magi Nation, the latter of which had been airing on Kids WB, and then had a huge delay between its first 2 seasons. They had a new distributor in A&E Home Video, which was going to release the Yu-Gi-Oh! Bonds Beyond Time movie, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Itself was going to air on Nicktoons much sooner. But then it all came crashing down. TV Tokyo and Nihon Ad Systems sued 4Kids over allegedly hiding money from them. As a result, all their business deals had shattered due to other companies not wanting to get their hands dirty. Viz, Dentsu, Rainbow, Funimation, Cookie Jar, I think it's Wild Brain now, A&E, and Nick/Nicktoons/Viacom, I don't really know who's in charge of that, all backed out of those deals, leaving 4Kids with nothing again. Well, maybe not nothing. They were still able to dub something called Tai Chi Chasers and the Force Yu-Gi-Oh! Series Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal. This is because if they had stopped dubbing Yu-Gi-Oh! It would count as an admission of guilt and they'd be stripped of the license, the only thing keeping them afloat now. But 4Kids ended up winning the case by default. Apparently, TV Tokyo and Nihon Ad Systems were so confident they'd win, they ended up doing a dub of Zexal behind everybody's backs, with Johnny Young Bosch voicing Yuma and Vic Mignogna voicing Shark. A few clips of this have surfaced online, but 26 full episodes were dubbed, and that will likely never see the light of day. This essentially handed the license back to 4Kids, but their business was essentially in the toilet, so they had no choice but to liquidate their remaining assets. Cue Saban and Konami to the rescue. Saban Brands, now a part of Hasbro, had bought the right to the CW block and renamed it Vortex. They also bought the TV rights to Dragon Ball Z Kai and Yu-Gi-Oh!, as well as the US rights to Sonic X and Cubix. Konami not only bought the US rights to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Series, but also 4Kids' entire recording studio. They created a new branch with it, then known as 4K Media Inc., now Konami Cross Media New York. 4Kids exited the TV business completely and became the shell they were before it started, now known as 4 Licensing Corporation. These are all of my sources right now. I especially want to give a huge thanks to 4Kids Flashback Podcast. This podcast features Tara Sands, the old voice of Mokuba from Yu-Gi-Oh!, and Steve Yurko. You may know him from a One Piece podcast. Yeah, they interview a lot of old 4Kids employees, and listening to them taught me a lot of new things about 4Kids, as well as a few old corrections, but we still got plenty of time left, so for now, I will leave the floor open to questions. Or just an applause if nobody has any questions. Since I still have time for it, if no one has any questions, I'd like to go over one request that I got from one of my friends on Twitter, the lost media of 4Kids. So, it turns out that the second half of Ultraman Tiga actually was dubbed, and it aired on Pogo TV in India. Mike Pecorello confirmed this. He was a writer of Ultraman Tiga. Let's see, what else is lost? A few episodes of Go-Go Riki are missing, and I think David Wills mentioned something about the last half of F-Zero GP Legend airing in the UK once. And now for extremely lost stuff, apparently when they were doing uncut episodes, according to Matthew Durdek, there was an uncut dub of the first episode of One Piece, which will likely never be the light of day. A lot of these are either still in their vault somewhere back, in the 4K Media vault, or possibly in Iron Mountain alongside projected theme songs. And looks like everyone's leaving and there's no more questions. So thank you all for coming to the Unbiased History of 4Kids Entertainment Rumors Debunked. I've done this panel about 3 times in a row, so I'm giving it a little rest until for a while, or possibly until something else big comes up. But anyway, if anyone is going to Puchicon T-Neck in New Jersey or in the New York area, stay tuned in about 2 weeks because I'll be presenting 2 panels there. The Leading Ladies of Mario, Bosses, Players, and Former Damsels, which will be a chronology about the female representation in the Mario franchise, and the Banjo-Kazooie from Dream to Switch, which will be a history of the Banjo-Kazooie franchise. But looks like that, well, technically it's not all the time we have left, but it's time for me to go offline and turn off this recording. And thank you for coming to my panel.